So what I am talking about in this video is violent video games and if they have an effect on teens and kids to make them more aggressive. Surprisingly, this isn't a one-sided story. There's an argument over if it does or not. I will be speaking about the side that says it does have an effect first. They say that many studies have found that people who play violent video games are more likely to engage in aggressive behavior. This is saying that studies find that people that play aggressive or violent video games tend to engage in aggressive behavior. This is from Psychology Today with their article titled, "Do Violent Video Games Make Kids More Violent?" They say that research explains they may not be as destructive as we think. An article published by Craig Anderson says that many studies have found that people who play violent video games are more likely to engage in aggressive and violent behavior. Clearly, this is saying that studies find that people that play violent video games engage in aggressive behavior more often than people who don't. Even though these articles say that they did find evidence, I was unable to find any hard evidence that clearly shows video games make kids and teens more aggressive and violent. Though these studies may say that they did find evidence to support this, I didn't find any. Other theories on this presented issue say that these outcomes are incorrect because of a thing known as confirmation bias. Confirmation bias shows that if something is presented widely in the media or other sources of information, we believe it to be true and interpret information while believing the thing to be true, skewing the overall statement that in this case is that violent video games make kids and teens more aggressive. The other side of this argument says that video games don't cause kids and teens to be more aggressive. They started with the fact that they found no connection, or at least criminologists and other experts in the field didn't. They said criminologists who study mass homicides, in their analysis of such crimes, have either excluded the issue of video games or explicitly referred to links between violent video games and mass homicides as a myth. People who study mass homicides never or incredibly rarely find evidence linking video games and the crime. This is the first real evidence I have found, and it's against. When asking mass homicide perpetrators, they have not identified substantial links with video games. No link between homicides and video games. This is from an article titled News, Media, Public Education, and Public Policy Committee by the Amplifier magazine. I have found a lot of things that say it does and it doesn't, but I have not found any real evidence stating that violent video games are linked with mass homicides or other crimes and aggressive behavior. Another thing backing up the stance that violent video games do not make kids and teens more aggressive states that, quote, but a large contingent of researchers focused on pediatric and adolescent health disagree. In fact, a group of 230 scholars from universities across the globe published an open letter in 2013 calling the APA's stance of violent video games misleading and alarmist. And many of those same scholars spoke out after the 2015 policy statement. Many people disagree with the studies and believe that they are faked and are there to make a political statement. What they are saying makes sense to me, though I want more information on what they did to come to their conclusion, because I'm not biased and I want to hear both sides of the story, and there's no real evidence listed in this article. I've been through both sides of this issue, and I wanted to give some of my own thoughts. My thoughts is that the video games don't make people more aggressive or violent. It's really the people, it's the way people were, not what video games make them be. If you tend to be more aggressive and violent, then you tend to want to choose to play more aggressive and violent video games. Well, if you're less aggressive and less violent and more like to think your way out of a situation or find solutions to puzzles and problems, you'd find a video game that does exactly that. So instead of violent video games making people violent, violent people make violent video games, which is where we see the link. We just take it the wrong way. I also earlier stated confirmation bias, and the way that it was stated in the articles that I read said that the confirmation bias was in the people and psychologists that believe violent video games to be linked to aggression before they did their research and studies. I think that if they are testing people and having them play a video game, a violent video game, then having them complete a set of challenges to see if they are more aggressive and violent, I think that there's a chance that the confirmation bias is in the people that are being tested. Because if you go in somewhere expecting a certain result, then you're more likely to get that result. This is called the placebo effect, because it's usually used when people take placebos as pills and they're told that it will fix the issue or illness that they have, and while not actually having anything in the pill, it does work because the person believes it to be true. So, to conclude, the opposite side that says that video games do have an effect say that many studies have found that people who play violent video games are more likely to engage in aggressive behavior. But I haven't found any hard evidence to back this up. And the side that says there is no link between aggressive behavior and violent video games say that there is no connection, because criminologists who study mass homicides in their analysis of such crimes have either excluded the issue of video games or explicitly referred to them to links between violent video games and mass homicides as a myth. Because I have so little evidence from the side that says violent video games and aggressive behavior are connected, I emailed a couple of the experts trying to find the raw information, and they weren't able to provide me with any. So, from my short amount of time studying this, I want to say that there is no connection, though neither side has any hard evidence I could find.